Back on the Peter King podcast, really happy to be joined by Drew Brees, who, is entering the 5th decade of his life, looking like he may one day enter the 6th decade of his life playing football. But Drew, we're sitting here at your training facility on a day at training camp, and I have to tell you, you look no different than you looked the first day I ever saw you in San Diego throwing a football.
Well, I appreciate that. I think I have a little bit less hair than back then, but I feel relatively the same. Maybe a bit more experience, maybe a little more wisdom, but about the same.
Yeah. So, do you sort of watch Brady? I asked Matt Ryan the other day in Atlanta how much more will you play? Do you look at yourself like Brady and Brees? And he said, I will play until they take me off the field. And he goes, what is so good for us now is the way the game is being officiated. They understand we really want the quarterbacks to play 16 weeks. When you think of the longevity of your position, do you think that has been a big factor over recent history?
I'm sure it has. I'm sure it has. We still get hit, but maybe we don't get hit quite like the guys did back before the favorable rule changes. I think the league has done a very good job over the last few years of making the necessary rule changes to make this game safer, just really to protect the guys that are not in positions to protect themselves, right? Which quarterbacks, being back there in the pocket, we're in that position. Receivers running across the middle are in that position. And so in light of the head and neck injuries and TBI and things that we've seen from former players, I think that we recognize that that's a part of the game that we need to make sure that we change for the better, for the safer, to allow for, I think, the longevity and also for the comfort level for a lot of young kids coming up to feel comfortable being able to transition to the game at some point too.
Do you think this offseason you added anything to your regimen for either physical fitness / longevity, anything for sort of a positive physical addition to you?
Okay, you'll like this one.
Yeah.
I spent this entire offseason playing with my kids in the backyard. Okay, so you're going to ask me, so what does that have to do with the question that you just asked? Me sitting there throwing wiffle balls to my kids, throwing tennis balls to my kids, running around playing soccer with them, just, throwing them in the pool every which way, right?
How old are your kids now?
They're 10, 8, 6 are my boys, and my little girl is 4.
Okay. That's pretty good symmetry.
Yeah, it is. We spaced that up out well, right? My wife nursed for a year, and then she got pregnant, and then she stopped nursing. So that's pretty much the way it went for all of them. But just maintaining those types of skill sets. When I was a kid, I played every sport. Okay, every sport: football, basketball, baseball, soccer, track, tennis, you name it. I feel like playing all those sports as a kid has helped attribute. I attribute that to my ability to play quarterback for this long. There's skill sets that I developed playing all those sports that I utilize on this football field playing the quarterback position. And I could spend hours sitting here going through every one of them. But still doing those things now with my kids, it's kind of like I'm going back to being a kid again myself. And I'm just pulling all those skill sets, right, from all those different sports.
Did you do this consciously?
Well, I did it because I just being a father to my kids, right? And I just want to be out there doing it with them. But I recognize that by doing that, I truly feel like I'm helping my career. I feel like that is part of the longevity piece, is just continuing to draw from the skill sets from all the other sports that I've played my whole life and how it applies to making me a better quarterback.
That's really, really interesting. Do you find yourself at the end of the day, because I know there have been studies for, parents who stay at home with their kids, at the end of a day, people have figured out how much they've run, how much they've moved, getting up, going down, and how strenuous it is to spend a day chasing your kids around. Do you believe that that helped you in a physical fitness kind of way, and all the different movements?
I'm not one that sits there and like counts my steps or counts my calories or doing anything like that. Like, I'm conscious with what I eat. I'm conscious with how I sleep, how I recover after a tough training regimen. But I'm really in tune with my body. And so I know when it's time to push, and I know when it's time to shut it down, right, and recover. And just call that, 19 years of professional sports where I just know my body that well.
Do you think that the care and feeding of your body and of quite a few older quarterbacks is changing to the point where it's quite possible that you could play to your 45 years old at a high level?
Absolutely. I do. I think obviously what Brady's been able to accomplish, and what he just turned 42 or about to turn 42, right? I mean, look at his resume, and you don't need to look any further. And certainly the way that he's continuing to play at a high level. I feel like there's I don't know exactly the things that Tom's doing, but I do know that he approaches it very much the same way that I do. I believe, and call it the information that we have now that maybe we didn't have 10 years ago or 20 years ago. Obviously, that plays a big role into it. Listen, sleep, nutrition, and recovery play such a huge role.
What's your sleep
such
story?
A huge
this
role.
is the thing that is changing so much over the last 3 or 4
sleep?
years. Yeah. Tell me about your sleep habits.
Well, there's some people that need more sleep than others, right? I mean, so you got to know your body. But I've got that down. I'm 7.5 hours of sleep a night, and I'm good. I really don't need more than that.
You know what
I don't want more than that.
Says? He's preaching the gospel of 10-hour sleep nights to the Houston Astros.
So maybe that works for him,
Yeah.
And some guys I think do need that, right? But for me, I feel like this. It's almost like the harder I train, and then the better that I do work on my recovery, as a result of that training, and then the better that I eat, the less sleep I need. So I feel like those things work hand in hand. I think there's a balance there. But man, I'm programmed. I'm like a clock. Like I start getting tired at the same time every night, and then my body gets me up at the same time every morning, and it's just a routine. It's just a structure, it's a routine, and that's the way I've programmed my body.
When you realize that you have thrown for more yards than any quarterback in the history of the National Football League, and the league is 100 years old, when you hear that, do you say, oh my God, I am not worthy? Or do you just say, oh my God, this is incredible? What do you think?
Yeah, I don't even know if I've fully absorbed that yet. Even though that happened almost a year ago, I really don't know if I fully absorbed that yet. I can still remember walking into Miami's Joe Robbie Stadium at the time in my very first season, my very first preseason game in 2001, and looking at Dan Marino's statistics in the Ring of Honor. And that was truly the first NFL stadium that I had walked into about to play. And to see all of those statistics, and at the time he had all those records, and just sit there and go, my goodness, how do you play that long? How do you even sniff those numbers? Like, that's just crazy. At the time, I'm just hoping that someday I can be a starting quarterback in this league, right? And you just put your head down and you play because you love it and you have fun and you enjoy the camaraderie and the teammates and you love to compete. And then, the years just kind of start to stack and you have some success, you make some Pro Bowls, you make the playoffs, maybe you go win a Super Bowl, and then all of a sudden they're talking about you're about to go out and break one of those records. And you're like, how did this happen?
Yeah.
How did we get here? I don't know.
It's almost like you've enjoyed the process so much. If you ever really kind of sit back and think, does that really do any good? I mean, does that help you accomplish the next thing? Especially because you're all about the next thing.
Yeah, I really, especially in this stage of my career, I really just try to stay in the moment.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't, there was a period of time up until about 3 years ago where I didn't even think about the end. I felt like it was going to last forever.
Yeah.
You know, you just kind of went from one season to the next. And maybe they all just kind of ran together a little bit. But about 3 years ago, I began to realize, okay, I'm closer to the end than I am the beginning. And when I walk away from the game, I don't want to have any regrets. I want to move on to the next chapter and just, man, approach that with the same type of passion and energy and enthusiasm as I have my football career. But I don't want to look back and say, man, I wish I would have enjoyed it a little more. I wish I would have. So I said, you know what? I am truly going to just live in the moment. And I am going to enjoy each and every day and each and every road trip and each and every opportunity in the locker room. Maybe laugh a little bit more, maybe enjoy it a little bit more. Just, man, I want to enjoy every second. And I feel like by taking that approach, it's heightened my level of appreciation, my sense of urgency, my overall enjoyment, and the success. I mean, look, you know, we've won a lot of games taking that approach. And so I like that approach. And that's the approach I'm going to continue to take until I hang it up.
Who can argue with you? I got two other things. Will there ever be a Senator Drew Brees?
I don't know. I'm not going to close the door on anything. And we'll see.
Because you care about a lot of things.
I do.
You're very active you've been very active at times in the NFL. You speak out when you see injustice. So I just wonder about that.
I would strongly consider something like that. You say politics. I would strongly consider politics at some point. I feel like there's benchmarks. There's things in my life that I want to accomplish, and so many of them are personal development type things. They're challenges that I see that I say to myself, I want to accomplish that. You know, I want to work towards that because I feel like that's part of my own personal development. That's going to make me a better person in some way. Maybe it's something that I really don't know a whole lot about, but I feel like I need to know more about that. So I need to pursue that. I need to accomplish that. I got a couple of these things in my mind that I want to continue to work towards in my next chapter, and then we'll see where that takes me. But
But you think it's still multiple years down the road? Would you like to play for 2, 3, 4, however many more that you can?
I'm anticipating that, but I'm just taking it one year at a time.
When I was in Jets camp, I talked to Sam Darnold and we finished, and he said, Peter, I really enjoy when you do on your podcast the quarterback conversations you have. You know, I went back and I listened to all of your quarterback conversations. And so I just started to think, when I talk to quarterbacks on this trip, I'm going to say, Sam Darnold's 22 years old. So it's sort of like, what advice would you give to your younger self? What advice would you give to Sam Darnold when he listens to this podcast?
So much of our league is about the results, right? We are in a results-driven business. But truly, it is about the process. If you focus on the process, the result takes care of itself. And so just simply that, develop what your process is, focus on that process, and too many times we get frustrated or we get down on ourselves or we begin to press because the result didn't match up with the process. But if you just focus on the process, eventually you get to the point where good process will consistently equal good result.
We'll end with this. People say to me sometimes, hey, what is that guy Drew Brees like? And I tell them about a story that I once went, I reported a story of you for HBO Sports, for Inside the NFL. This was 8 or 10 years ago. You were here, you were doing great, you were playing well. And I was going to take a walk with you in Audubon Park, okay, with your dog. And we were walking, and all of a sudden, your dog poops right there on the ground. And we went to pick it up. My producer, Bentley Weiner, and we were going to pick it up. He said, no, that's not going to happen. I'll take care of this. I take care of my own dog. So I said, this is a guy who insists on cleaning up after his dog. I kind of think it's an apocryphal story. you'll take care of yourself in a totally weird way, the strangest question you've had as a quarterback in the NFL. What does that story say about you?
Well, it's, it makes me feel like that's the way I'm raised, and that's what I'm trying to impart on my kids as well, is that if you break it, you fix it, right? If you mess it up, you clean it up, right? You be a solutions person. Don't be a problems person, right? Always, if it's my mess, I'm going to clean up. And you know what? Even if it's not my mess, if it's something that needs to be done, then I'll be the one to do it, right? And so I don't know. Maybe that's just a bit of an assertive mentality, or just do the right thing. That's the way I was raised.
Do you remember telling us to get out of the way?
Yeah.
That was hilarious.
Yeah.
That producer, Bentley Weiner, still is at HBO. When I talk to her occasionally, she said, "Remember that time when Brees had to clean up after his dog? He wouldn't let us do it." I said, yeah. Anyway.
Well, now I try to get my kids to clean up the dog poop, and they won't do it. So that's a constant battle, but that's a whole nother story.
Drew Brees, thanks a lot. Have a great year. Hope you have 5 more.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Mike Tirico, and thanks for watching. Make sure to hit subscribe for the latest news and highlights from NBC Sports.